I've been building my own kingdom for everyone to see. It exists to keep me safe from harm, and it's intact to glorify me. Nobody helped me build this up. It was me and me alone. I've appointed myself as the king, and I've given myself the throne. But it turns out I'm no ruler, and I have no control. So I have decided to destroy it all. I'm tearing down the walls, kicking down the doors. Everything inside this kingdom is yours. 'Cause what I've made is worthless, and it cannot stand. Come and breathe some life into my empty, cold, dead hands. Down with the fickle king, away with this fantasy. You are the one I need. Death to the kingdom of me. Death to the kingdom of me. I should probably be frightened. This empire's all I know, but it always does more damage than good. I'm afraid it's gotta go. I know that I can't be trusted, 'cause I'm just a man. And if you hadn't given your life for me, a loser would be all that I am. You know they say just follow your heart. I'm afraid that's a load of trash. Your heart will take you down to deep, dark places where you feel like you'll never come back. So I'm coming out of the dark. This facade is I woke up feeling like it was time to tighten up. Yeah, I woke up feeling like it might be a good day to get it done. That's right. Oh, the stadium is just like my second house. Now I'm two-tone talking, they can't shut my mouth. I woke up feeling like it was time to tighten up. Yeah, 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 yeah. I woke up feeling like it was time to tighten up.
Welcome, everybody, to the Two-Tone Talk podcast. We've got a special guest joining us today. It is Buck Reising. You might have heard him on 104.5 The Zone, A to Z Sports. Buck, we appreciate you so much coming on today, taking the time. I appreciate it very much.
Special is not how I would describe. Well, some people might describe me as special, but that depends. The tack that they take. I appreciate you having me, Brad.
Hey, man, social media can be pretty brutal. And I've seen you get the backlash before, but I think by now I've seen everybody, including myself, get the backlash from fans. And so hopefully everybody will stay cordial in the comments today, no matter what we say about what's going on with the Titans. Again, I appreciate you being here. And the first thing I got to ask about, as we're recording this, Cam Ward's Pro Day was yesterday. The Titans had a whole mob of people there to see him up close. They've got another workout planned with him. Things have changed quick. I thought for a period of time Abdul Carter was the consensus pick in most everybody's mind, but boy, has that changed over the last few weeks. Do you get the sense that all signs at this point are pointing to Cam Ward? Because that's what it seems like everywhere you look. Do you think it's all but a given at this point?
I would say so, but you always kind of leave the door open for, I mean, the fact that the Browns and the Giants had equally as big contingents at his pro day yesterday. And I know all 32 teams had representation because there's 20 players working out, not just Cam Ward, even though it was treated as Cam Ward Day. So there's always conversations that happen, and I think that the Titans are pretty good with the idea of Cam Ward at this point in time, but they shouldn't be closed-minded about the process. There's still a month, just slightly less than a month. April 24th is the first round of the draft before this actually goes down. So you don't want to close yourself off to any possible situations because there could always be a big enough offer that makes them have no choice but to trade the number one overall pick. But yeah, I think they're fine with Cam if that's the way that it ends up playing out.
I think that's been my thing is I'm about 80% on Cam. I think he's going to be the pick, but I just keep asking how desperate are the Giants going to get? How desperate are they going to be to move up and get him? Are them and the Browns content with Shador? It's going to be right up into the last second, I'm sure, with what's going to happen there. Regarding Cam Ward, do you see, because we've seen in Washington, we've seen in Houston, rookie quarterback comes in and, is a big part of changing things really quickly there. Do you see, just from your own personal belief, that Cam Ward could come in and be that for Tennessee? Does he have that special, thing about him that you could see?
Yeah. I wouldn't compare anybody to what Stroud did and what Jane Daniels might have just had the best rookie season a quarterback's ever had. So I'm going to go ahead and avoid any kind of comparison to them because Washington in a pretty unique situation. Not only did they get a new quarterback and a new coach and a new general manager, they got a new owner. So that's the definition of an organizational reset. Those things don't happen in the NFL. And we know that Washington's been a miserable franchise for, almost my entire adult lifetime. At this point. So it took something of that, that magnitude to really flip the script there. CJ Stroud was excellent his rookie year. He broke a bunch of records that had been previously held by equally as impressive rookie quarterbacks in Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. So, I'm gonna assume that if you made me pick between those two, their rookie years and the field, I'd probably take the field just playing percentages. But it doesn't mean that Cam Ward can't come in here and make a difference. They need better quarterback play. He is an infinitely more successful college quarterback than Will Levis was. And that is starting point number one. They have a better offensive line situation for Cam Ward, theoretically, than they have had for anybody. Malik Willis, Ryan Tannehill, Will Levis in the last 3 years of Titans football. So I'm not going to assign any like that big of a value to any one player when there's so many different things that need to happen for these guys to be successful.
Absolutely. You mentioned Will Levis. If the Titans pick Cam Ward, this has been a topic actually today on Twitter that I've seen. Is there a place for Will Levis here going forward? I personally think it's kind of a weird dynamic if you have the guy that you tried to make the franchise guy and it didn't work out, and then the guy you got to replace him, that's the quarterback room. Do you think it is kind of sealed that Will Levis might be traded or something if the Titans were to pick Cam Ward, or do you think he could potentially get that backup quarterback spot over Brandon Allen?
No, I think they brought Brandon Allen in here to be Mason Rudolph, and that Will Levis is in the Malik Willis role this time around. So my expectation would be that he would be moved. I don't see any harm in keeping him through training camp the way that they did with Malik last year. I would like them to at least have a competition as opposed to just giving one player the job the way that they did last year with Will Levis. I think there's reason to believe that he might have been pushed by Mason Rudolph or Malik Willis, given how much Malik Willis improved from year over year and then went to Green Bay and ultimately got the better of the Titans head to head. So they're not going to keep three quarterbacks on the active roster. They didn't sign Brandon Allen for him to he's here to compete with Will Levis. Cam Ward is not coming in to compete with either of them. Even though I would like a world where the rookie quarterback at least got the opportunity to sit and learn a little bit. That's not going to happen with the number one overall pick.
Shifting gears to Brian Callahan, because I especially was listening to what you had to say when Rand Carthon was fired. You were pretty vocal that you were skeptical about whether that was the right thing to do. I thought it was interesting that they fired Rand but kept Callahan. I was kind of the belief if you're going to fire one, you may as well just wipe the slate clean. A lot of people think Callahan is on a pretty hot seat going into 2025. First year was a disaster. Do you think Brian Callahan's seat is pretty hot going into 2025? Has he gotten a vote of confidence from them as they said pretty much it's Rand's fault? Let's get rid of Rand maybe. Let's keep you. Where are we at with Brian Callahan, especially if they draft the young quarterback? You would like for the coach and the quarterback to be together for a couple of years at least before you pull the plug on one of them. Where does Brian Callahan stand going into this 2025 season?
No, I mean, they were the worst team in football, and their coaching staff did not improve a single part of the football team last year, consequentially. They regressed in almost every area, and they were able to kind of level out at some spots, whether it be special teams. Obviously, they made changes there, but no, of course, Brian Callahan's coming in as one of the coaches who you're probably, I mean, he's probably going to be one of the betting favorites to be fired first in the NFL season just because their roster is still going to be bad. It may still be the worst in the AFC South by the time they get through with this. And that's just because they have so much further to go. They're probably the most improved team in the division in the offseason so far in free agency, but that doesn't, that, their basement was very, very evident to everybody involved. And my position with I didn't take issue with Rand Carthon being fired. I took issue with the fact that he was the only one fired.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
plenty of people in that building who still are there and deserve to be fired for 3-14 last year. And I was okay with them moving on from Brian Callahan if that's the tack that they chose to take. But they're going to give him an opportunity. I think the quarterback, drafting the rookie quarterback or the first round quarterback just speeds up his clock.
Based on early impressions over these last couple of months, what are your thoughts on Mike Borgonzi? And going off of that, kind of a two-part question. What are your thoughts on him early on with not a lot to go on? And also, the power structure has been something that's been talked about among fans. Who's calling the shots? Brinker, Borgonzi. We see them both up there. Amy wasn't even at the press conference when Borgonzi was introduced. What are your thoughts on Borgonzi, and what are your thoughts on the power structure? Does it feel a little wonky as someone closer to the organization like you, or do you kind of see it as something that could work?
It's more clear than it's been in the last 3 years. So on that end, it's a positive development. At least we have clearly defined roles, and people in the building who are working for these people at the very top of the food chain have clearly defined direction. That's not been the case in the last couple of years, and I've heard a lot of people inside the building complaining about that. They're not entirely sure who they answer to in certain situations. It's kind of like Kevin Byard and Shane Bowen and Mike Vrabel a couple of years ago when Mike just was not going to make Shane the defensive coordinator or was part-time defensive coordinator or however the hell that thing worked, and their defense was horrendous in 2020 for a couple of different reasons, but you understand that the general direction is not something that everybody was on the same page about. It seems that they are on the same page about the direction that they want to take this thing. Whether they're going to get it right this time is something that I think is fair to question. Borgonzi is very just about his business. He's just very much about the scouting process. He's not even negotiating the contracts, really. That's Chad Brinker's role as the president of football operations, which I thought was an interesting pivot. Not to say that Borgonzi's not involved in the negotiations at all, but Brinker is the primary negotiator on behalf of the contract situation. And I think that also a part of his job is trying to find ways to save the organization money because they are in they're not a bad cap situation by any means, but they're not cap flush right now. And they have a lot of work to do to get this roster back to baseline functional. So early impressions of Mike Borgonzi, I'm gonna go down to owners meetings this week or next week, I guess, Monday and Tuesday, and have the opportunity to catch up with both of them in a more laid back setting because it's just been a bit of a whirlwind here. I think that they're pleased with what he brings to the table. So whether or not, again, that they end up being correct in that, they were pleased with Rand Carthon until they weren't pleased with Rand Carthon. Yeah. They're very different individuals, though. They're very different in the way that they approach this thing. Rand was more of a diplomatic, almost ambassador role for the Titans, recruiting in free agency. And Borgonzi is, I think, just a little bit. He's not a little. He's a lot more rigid about this than Rand is. But there's no question that he's prepared.
One thing I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but I did want to ask if you happen to see, speaking of Rand Carthon, that he interviewed Cam Ward yesterday on the NFL Network after the pro day was over. I was, I mean, I thought I was in the Twilight Zone. I think the tweet I saw said, when this camera pans out, you're not going to believe who's interviewing Cam Ward. Is Rand Carthon, I mean, was it the sort of thing where, I mean, it felt out of whack to me because last offseason they fired Vrabel and it felt like they were saying Rand Carthon's going to lead us into the future. And then to pivot this quickly, they made all of those free agent moves. I mean, was this just them stepping back and saying, okay, that didn't work. We spent all that money. We were awful. Was that them placing all the blame at his feet? Or was that just a convenient firing? I mean, what do you make of all that? It's still baffling to me.
No, he didn't do a good enough job, and also he fell out of favor with ownership. The thing that matters most with that organization is who kisses Amy's ass the most. Like that's what it is, and that's fine. Like it's her team. If that's the way that they want to set up the power dynamic, then they're entitled to do so. And I disagree with a lot of the things that they do on a regular basis. I think most people should. They're one of the worst teams in football the past couple of years, but. Yeah. That doesn't mean that they can't hit on the quarterback and get back to winning games and cover up a lot of the stuff that's easy to pick at when they're as bad as they are on and off the field. So Rand didn't do a good enough job. There's no disputing that. They drafted Will Levis with Rand Carthon as the general manager. They then spent $228 million plus around Will Levis to build a team that was appreciably worse than the team that bottomed out at 6-11. So both things can be so. They could have had flaws in their vision, and also Rand did not do a good enough job or did not do well enough in his job, even if they moved the goalposts on him. And they did.
And something I've heard you say many times on your show, winning fixes everything. If they start winning, it doesn't matter about what's going on in the front office. Fans are going to be happy.
Titans fans don't give a shit about who their president of football operations is if they're 11-6.
Well, I think that's most fans. I mean, the winning's what matters. Before we're about to wind it down here, I know you've got things to do. Just one more quick question about the draft, and then one certain player on the Titans that I'm curious your thoughts of. Assuming Cam Ward is the pick in the first round, again, who knows? We still got a month, but assuming Cam Ward goes first, to me, they've addressed offensive line in free agency for better or for worse, and you've got the second round pick, no third rounder right now. Is there an idea that you have of maybe, because wide receiver and edge rush really feel like the next biggest thing on this roster, not the only things, but the biggest things. You can only have one pick in the second round. Do you have a sense that maybe they might take their edge rusher there in the second round, wide receiver? A lot of people mock drafting Luther Burden to still be around at 35. I don't buy that. I don't think he will be, but a lot of people do. The wide receiver from Ohio State. Do you kind of have a preference of what you would, think would be best for them? Maybe trade back in the second round, people have mentioned. What are your thoughts on that?
Anything they can do to pick up more picks makes sense to me. I think you can get productive wide receivers in the third and fourth round. I think you can get edge rushers throughout the course of this draft, and I would not be opposed to them taking multiple players at either position, to be honest with you. And just, the idea of specific players at specific spots, and I know that fans hate this answer, but like it's how the draft board plays out. You see where the rest of the teams go. You have no idea what direction they're going to go. Nobody other than Atlanta knew that Penix was going to go at 8 and Bo Nix at 12 to the Broncos, and it just set an entirely different level of expectations for the rest of the first round, and then the rest of the draft after the fact when you don't have another quarterback going until the 5th in Spencer Rattler. So with that, not having access to their draft board, they will have players, they'll have contingency plans at positions, right? They'll have players in buckets, as Coach Matt calls them, and he builds his own draft board with Rhett Bryan. And I've had the opportunity to just kind of understand how teams make a draft board through Coach Mack, and I always appreciate his guidance there, as I know the fans do as well. I think that you could do worse than an edge rusher in the second and an edge rusher in the fourth or the fifth, and adding a wide receiver somewhere down the line if they are high enough up on your draft board. I know Xavier Restrepo had a terrible 40-yard dash at Miami yesterday in his pro day, but if Cam Ward's comfortable with him and they can continue to produce, or at least produce something similar to what they were able to put together in college, where Xavier Restrepo's had multiple 1,000-yard seasons. I don't care how fast he runs. If he can play in the slot, you need a slot receiver, and you can get him in the fourth round or the fifth round. That's great. Take him. So the answer is both. They need both. Who's ever the best player available at both in the second round, and if you can get into the third round, great. I'm sure there would be teams interested in 35, and that third round pick in back-to-back years is pretty glaring at this point, with the Will Levis trade and then the L'Jarius Sneed trade costing you two of those.
I mentioned there was one player in particular I wanted to ask you about that's still currently on the roster, Treylon Burks. Obviously, it just has been a total fail from the word go with him. I would have thought as soon as the season ended that Treylon was probably not going to be back on this team. But as things go, the only wide receiver they've picked up is Van Jefferson. That's not a big needle mover, as we all know. Bryce Oliver, we keep hearing about him. But outside of Calvin Ridley, there's really nobody at the top of the depth chart there. And I'm not saying Treylon would be, but does it not kind of feel like he won't go away? He will not. Treylon Burks will not die, as I said on my podcast Monday. He won't go away. Do you think there is now a realistic path that Treylon Burks is back on this team, even if it's at the bottom of the depth chart in 2025?
Well, yeah, it just makes zero sense to cut him. I mean, you would have to eat almost, $4.5 million, just looking at Spot Track off the top of my head right now. You don't have to pick up his fifth-year option, but you've already paid the money for Treylon Burks. If you want to pay Treylon Burks $4.5 million just to go away because you dislike him that much, I guess. I mean, you can do that, but I don't think this team is in a position to just eat $4.5 million in salary when they have needs all over the place. And if, even if he doesn't play offensively, can you get something out of him on special teams? Wait out the year and just go that direction. Just because he's here doesn't mean that he has to factor in a meaningful way. I think people get caught up in it and they want him gone as soon as possible. It's kind of like the Levis thing. You're not going to cut Will Levis just for the sake of cutting Will Levis. You're not going to cut Treylon Burks just to eat $4.5 million. Right.
And I think with Levis, there is a realistic trade possibility. With Burks, I don't think you're getting anything there. Buck Reising, I appreciate you very much for coming on today and taking the time out. And real quick, I just want to know, because I've heard some people ask, because you're in radio, Mike Keith left. We haven't heard anything about a replacement. Are we anywhere near getting a replacement? Are you taking the job?
No, I don't want the job.
I figured.
I'm all set. I appreciate. I appreciate the few people that have said you should take that job. One, that's a fundamental misunderstanding of just how much more talented Mike Keith
he's
is.
great.
Basically, everybody else who talks in front of a microphone for a living. Taylor Zarzour is who I think is going to be the play-by-play voice. Nothing official, but it sounds like they might announce that around the draft, whether that's during the draft. I know Titans Radio is going to have coverage of all that. I know they talked to Jonathan Hutton and I'm blanking on the name of the other guy, JP Shadrick out of Jacksonville as well. But I think that they're not hiring a part-time, or they're not hiring a full-time person to replace Mike Keith. They're gonna piece that job out a little bit. So yeah, I think Taylor Zarzour is gonna, if he can find room in his schedule between doing the golf and doing the SEC on Saturdays to fly in and do Titans games on Sundays, then that's probably who's going to be your guy.
Well, there you go, folks. You heard it here. Appreciate you, Buck. Thank you very much, and we'd love to have you on anytime. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. You do a great job.
Appreciate you, man.